All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 24, 2024 Kitsap Regional Library Board of Trustees regular board meeting. I am President Eric Fong. With me are Stephanie George and Eric Sisney, Vice President Gina Steiner, and Board Trustee Marwan Cameron are out on excused absences today. Thank you for being here. So we will go to agenda item 2, Kitsap Regional Library mission statement. Stephanie.
I stand ready. Inspiring curiosity and connection.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to Jason for welcome and introductions.
Good evening and welcome in. With us today is Executive Assistant Tammy Jeffries, Deputy Director, Chief Financial Operating Officer Dan Baer, Deputy Director of Public Services Shannon Peterson, Director of IT and Facilities Mike Rose, and then we have Executive Director of the Kitsap Regional Library Foundation Wendy Kyle. Two special guests are with us in our mission spotlight tonight. South Kitsap Regional Manager Kathleen Wilson and Public Services Supervisor at Port Orchard Deanna Conger is joining us to regale us in all things Port Orchard, and particularly the upcoming 100th year anniversary, and we can't wait to hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. There are no additions or changes to the agenda. There's also no public comment. So we will go straight to the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion of the Board of Trustees with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired, items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by request. This includes 6.01, minutes of the August 27, 2024 regular board meeting, 6.02, payment of August 2024 bills, 6.03, surplus library materials withdrawn from the collection for August 2024. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I so move.
I second.
Thank you very much. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Thank you. And with that, we will go to agenda item 7, presentations, reports, and briefings. Mission Moment, Port Orchard Events and Community Connections. Kathleen Wilson, South Kitsap Regional Branch Manager. Kathleen, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me tonight. I'm very excited to be here to talk about the 100th anniversary of the Port Orchard Library. I was actually scheduled to speak in March and then had to cancel at the last minute. I was going to speak about the partnerships between the two South Kitsap libraries in the community and with each other, which I'm going to speak a little bit about after this presentation, but this actually worked out perfectly because now I get to present to you prior to the celebration of the 100 years on Friday. So please I'm open to any criticisms on this PowerPoint. As I was telling Shannon, I may have gotten a little bit too steeped in the history of Port Orchard. I was talking to my son Ronan yesterday. He's in California, and I said, if you have any questions about the Port Orchard Library, you can always come and ask me. I know everything about it. And he said, well, Mom, I would have asked you anyway, but okay. So I guess we'll just kick it off. 100 years ago was 1924. Let me, it's not wanting to. There we go. Okay. So at that time, the Port Orchard population was 1,393. This is according to the 1920 census, which was the first census, I believe, that was undertaken in the United States. So it was a little bit different. They had divided things by voting precincts, and so the town was included in the Port Orchard voting precinct. I have no idea what that encompassed, but I'm assuming probably down towards Olalla, out towards Manchester. So right now the city population is over 15,000, so it was definitely a different time. It's not wanting to change my. It was working so well before. Okay. So since this is a library presentation, I thought it would be good to just discuss for a second about what popular titles have been published that year and enduring even today. So E.M. Forster's A Passage to India and A.A. Milne's When We Were Very Young, where the first appearance of a very popular bear in this book of poetry by A.A. Milne. So these were some of the books that would have been on the shelves at the Port Orchard Library. So the funny thing about history, and even though this is only 100 years ago, the records were not that great. So my entire time that I worked at the Port Orchard Library, I had always everything that I had seen had said, established 1924. 1924 was burned into my brain as, okay, that's, as we got closer, I was like, that's going to be our 100th anniversary. I have to remember, 2024, we're going to do something special. This is back around like 2021, 2022, thinking about it. So in February, March or so of this year, I had one of our staff members, Alexis Frayne, go over to Bremerton and do some research with the old Port Orchard Independence to try to find like the exact day in 2024 so we could kind of celebrate it and have our anniversary revolve around that day. Well, come to find out that actually on Thursday, October 4th, 1923, as a coalition of the PTA approached the City Council, and it consisted of Mrs. Howard Shartuck, Mrs. F.M. Applegate, and one Mr. McCarthy. They presented the matter of a public library for the town of Port Orchard and asked for the use of the town hall for the purpose of a library, and that the council make a levy of 1 mill in the town levy for the purpose of a library. So, as Dan will know, this was unfortunate because the budget for that year had already been set. This was the meeting where they were going to accept the budget. And so although the council felt like it was a very good idea to have a library, unfortunately they were not going to be able to fund it that year. So not to be thwarted, the PTA contended that they would be able to institute the library for the year with donations and asked for the use of the town hall for that purpose. And the space was duly granted, provided, however, that the PTA saw that all the books were properly cared for and the town property preserved. The mayor appointed a finance committee to work in conjunction with the PTA to render such small financial aid as they could from the general fund for shelving and other incidental expenses. So they got their room in the front of town hall, they got a couple shelves, they got some paint, but they did not get any money. But by November 22nd, 1923, the Industrious Committee had received donations of books, which included 200 from the Seattle Public Library, and they had a neat amount of money on hand. That's a direct quote, so I have no idea how much that was, that had been procured through donations. Donations were requested from the public for books and magazines that were no longer needed. The library opened for a short time, so they actually opened on November 22nd, 1923, but then they closed and reopened several weeks later. So 1924 was the first year of library service, and that's how we're celebrating this. Their hours when they opened were Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 2 to 5 p.m., and then they reopened on those days from 7 to 9. And I thought, you can definitely tell it was being run by volunteers because they went home and had dinner, did some stuff at home, and then came back and worked at the library. Open till 9, though. I was pretty impressed by that. In September 1924, the City Council agreed to fund the library with a levy of $500,000, and 1924 was the first year of library service in Port Orchard. So this was... although it was technically started in 1923, it operated with a volunteer basis for all of 24, and then at the end of 24 was funded by the City Council. It's like it goes to sleep. I'm not moving my slides fast enough, I think. So Between 1924 and 1976, the Port Orchard Library moved 3 times, from the humble beginnings in the front room of a town hall, which was a small white frame building at the foot of Sydney, very close to where the library is now. So I found this photo, which depicts a white frame building very close to where the library is now. You can kind of see it across the street, and then there's the one at the foot of Sydney. Although I've worked with the historians at the Sydney Gallery, and there's really no known photo of that town hall. So this is where it would be around the time this photo is a little bit earlier, but there's potential that that is actually a picture of the first town hall and library. But it was right in the middle of what is now Sydney Avenue, next to where the current Old Central Antique Mall is. Sharon Newell, who was the branch manager in 1994 when our current building celebrated its 10th anniversary as a library, wrote, "The library has changed its location now, sitting on Phil over the beach, but its patrons can still walk out the door, down the ramp, and board the same Carlisle 2 with the latest bestsellers in hand to read en route to Bremerton as they could 50, which is now 100, because they can still do the exact same thing years ago," which I think that's, a really neat thing. So this is a photo depicting Bay Street in the 1920s. You can see those cars going right down the middle of the street, but sadly you can't see the town hall in here either. This was 1922. And much of the information I have on the library during this era, and there's required the city. Oh, thank you. Oh, nice. Upgrade. Require the city to continue to have a library board. So these members were appointed by the city, and the board remained until 2010, when Port Orchard voters checked with KRL. The library was restocked, new shelving, and, quote, bright furnishings were added. And KRL also agreed to pay the salary of one library clerk. Notes from an October 1968 library open house written by the librarian at that time, Marianne Hersicorn, discuss an addition in June and July of '68 that increased the floor space of the library 50%. And at this time, it was just still in one room of City Hall. Book shipments for requested material that had been arriving monthly now arrived weekly, and the library was open 4 days a week. In 1969, Port Orchard circulated 41,327 items, which was an increase of 10,000 items over the previous year, which just goes to show what increasing the floor space in a library will do. But even with the increased space, the community needs were far larger than a one-room library could serve. And in 1976, the library moved again. There we go. So this is their new home, the library's new home at 736 Prospect Street. This building was formerly the telephone company building and had been mentioned as a possible new library site going back to 1971. Although other potential sites were the ground floor of the newly constructed Bayview building or merging with the newly constructed South Kitsap High School. interesting that they had that idea way back in the 70s too. The board had urged the city council to set aside funds for a library move throughout the late 1960s and early 70s, and for a short time, everyone was happy with the move to the new standalone building. However, right away, there were problems with parking, this building not having a dedicated parking lot. And if you've been to Port Orchard, this is like right on the Prospect side of the Cine Gallery, so there's literally no parking there. It's all on-street parking. So one of the very first letters I found from the librarian was just asking the city to please install parking meters on the street because people were parking for too long and they couldn't, the patrons had nowhere to park. The 1977 KRL annual report states the Port Orchard circulation was 67,417, well behind Bremerton, who circulated 250,519 items that year, and Bainbridge Island, 113,626 items. But at this time, Port Orchard was the third highest circulation in the system. So the plan to find a new home went into action almost as soon as the books were on the shelves at 736 Prospect. This is librarian Sally Morris Rowlett on the far left. She started working with the library board to locate a new home for the library. She started writing letters to the owner of the building at 87 Sydney Avenue, which was at that time the post office, inquiring about the usage of the building when the postal lease expired because they were building a new post office. And this next slide is a letter from librarian Sally Morris to the owner of that building, and she says, as you know, from our previous letter of last year, she references another letter, we are very interested in your harborside building that now houses the Port Orchard Post Office. We are aware that the post office may be moving, and we are hoping that you might consider making that building available in the future to the Port Orchard community for a new expanded library. So then I found some documentation that Mr. Pattinson had written back, and there was a lot of correspondence kind of going back and forth between the librarian and the owner of that building. And then on December, whoops, let me go back a couple. Yeah, go back to, okay, next slide. Yeah, there we go, sorry. On December 7th, 1983, with the library purchased, the city purchased the library building site, the old post office, for the bargain price of $210,000. And in this article, Councilman Robert Geiger states that the offer by Mr. Patton to sell the building to the city for the purposes of the library was a surprise. He's quoted as saying about the owner, Mr. Patton, apparently he woke up one morning last week with the idea that the building would make a good library. And then magically sold it to the city for that purpose. The librarian at the time of the move, Peggy Hughes, and then when I got here, she was the children's librarian on Bainbridge Island. So she put out hand-illustrated, mimeographed quarterly newsletters. And I thought this was so neat that this artwork on this newsletter about the library moving was our communications department took it and reflected it in chapters. So you can see it in your latest edition of Chapters, which I just think is so cool. So she, I also think that it's neat that it was exactly 40 years ago that the library moved to its new home on 87 Sydney. It opened on Monday the 24th, which is just kind of neat. So we've been there 40 years. And then this is how it looked on opening day. Very different from how it looks now. We still have those windows, but they're half windows. Of course, we have our book drop. We have totally different doors. But this is what it looked like on opening day. And then an article in the Kitsap Sun that came out on the day that it, oh, oops. I'll just let you do it. I'll just signal you. Asks, looking for a book? try the library. Looking for the library? Better make sure you've got the right address. So library hours were Monday through Thursday, 1 to 8:30, and then 10:30 to 5:30 Friday, and 1 to 5:30 Saturday. So a little bit different than what we have now. They had the morning. I know that was kind of still something that people talked about when I first arrived in 2000, that they wish that they still had the mornings, and it was so nice to start working at noon. I can imagine. A library newsletter from this era shared the statistic that 80 VHS cassettes a day were checked out from the library. And when I mentioned that fact to our adult services librarian, Jackie Wilson, she said, "Wow, that's a lot of rewinding." You can remember that in those days when we would ask people to rewind their cassettes and they never did. Be kind, rewind. Yep, exactly. Going through this, several of the librarians kept meticulous records and notes, including Peggy Hughes, who was the librarian in '84 when the library moved, and she was the one that did those little illustrations. And I just thought this was so neat. This is an idea for young adult programming ideas, and they included babysitting programs, skateboarding, outdoor survival skills. There's one on there for finding your right color, which is huge on TikTok right now. And how to play Dungeons and Dragons, which are super popular programs in our system right now. So, it's interesting how, even though this was way back in 1985, the ideas are really still valid. Although one of the ideas for publicizing the programs, which was sending mimeographed flyers to the local teen hangouts, I don't even think that would be possible today, but they just show how enduring the program-oriented side of the library is. So just a quick look at annual stats. From 68, 78, and 88, the circulation, you can just see how it really jumped from the move to that new building. It just more than doubled, which you can see, the floor space tripled at that time. So this is our current library, 87 Sydney. This is how it looks today. It's undergone numerous remodels, including the addition of the area that's now our meeting rooms and children's area. That happened in '95, which interestingly cost $210,000, the exact price of the library. The city paid for a new roof in 2013, and then there was a major remodel in 2012, and then in 2013 there was a major remodel that removed a lot of the old false columns, really opened up the space, completely revamped the front part of the library. We did some new shelving, new furnishings, and then major asbestos removal, so we were closed for 3 months at that time. And that's pretty close to what the library looks like today with that updated layout. And I can't talk about the library history without mentioning the Friends of the Library. This is a picture of our current Friends, and there's such a great article in this month's chapters on our super supportive and wonderful Friends group. They have been supporting the library for 44 years. They support us with summer learning, staff support. They're just a wonderful giving group that would do anything for the library, and now they're meeting every Wednesday and just welcoming new members of the community. One of our teen volunteers has joined the Friends of the Library, so it's just really exciting to see that multi-generational aspect to the Friends. And current statistics for 2024, we've got over 40,000 cataloged items. Circulation is almost 150 as of July, 150,000. We've had over 100 programs, over 4,000 in attendance, and we're averaging 8,000 patrons a month. And we had the first month over 10,000 patrons through our doors in July since 2019. So we're definitely getting back up there. Our computer sessions this year so far are up 28% with over 7,500 logged sessions, and we've registered over 2,000 library card holders this year. So we're really excited about where we're going. And We're cultivating a lifelong love of reading and learning, supporting parents and caregivers as their child's first teachers. So this here is this slide kind of depicts some of our the connecting community and bridging and building relationships that foster the engagement with the community. So this is an essential part of our work. So you can see today that accessing the library it's easier than ever before for South Kitsap School District students. In 2023, in November of 2023, the student ID card became also their library card, and we're the third district in the system to do that. So now they have access immediately as soon as they get their first ID card to anything that the library can offer. We're continuing our successful To the Library, third graders to the library program that's, I'm really proud, started in Port Orchard. Shannon was there to help get it started. We've had thousands and thousands of third graders coming through, and now we don't have to make them cards, which is really nice. They already have the cards, so we can just focus on telling them, how amazing the library is and all of the services that we have to offer. And that middle slide is three of our youth services staff waving goodbye to one of the buses leaving the library. The top slide is from our foam party that we had this summer, our summer learning wrap-up party. We had over 700 kids there at that party, and that took place at the Port of Bremerton Marine Park at Port Orchard, and that is a great partnership that we have. We work every year with the Port on allowing us to use that space because we cannot hold these programs in the library. We could definitely not hold that program inside the library for sure. And then I wanted to include something about COVID because that bottom slide is during COVID, right when we first reopened and we were able to offer walk-up curbside service. And it just shows how we uniquely adapted each location to fit the needs of our patrons. And at Port Orchard, we were able to use that window for walk-up service, and I'm just really proud of how our staff pulled together during that time to innovate and create new services that our community really needed. And this next slide, I'm going to talk about definitely when I do my presentation on Friday, but it's sort of preaching to the choir here. I think you all probably helped work on the priority areas and are well familiar with our priority areas, so I won't really expand on this slide too much. But this is where our library is heading now. And this is where our library will be in the future. This is a very exciting, we're looking towards remaining on the waterfront and downtown well into this century and the next century with plans to build our new waterfront library and event center. This building will take full advantage of the waterfront and have numerous places to hold small meetings, including individual Zoom meetings, large community meetings, lots of programs. It's right on the waterfront where the current Kitsap Bank building is, and you can see that it's got beautiful viewing decks. The library is the first floor of this building. And the next slide, I know it's going to be a little bit fuzzy. This is the floor plan of the library. So this is the first floor plan, and you can see just the staff areas over on the left side, and then we've got that cream colored area is what I'm just super, super excited about. That's the entryway, and that portion of the building is not technically the library, but it will be used by readers, and the ability to have that multifunctional space when you first come in the library. There'll be a beautiful artwork there, so it's just super exciting to think about how we're going to be able to access the waterfront, take full advantage of it with covered outdoor spaces. There's a covered outdoor children's space, just taking our services into the future and beyond. So thanks to Rice Fergus Miller, and this was a huge effort, a huge amount of planning and work done to ensure that our community has a new library that'll serve us well into the next century. We have worked, the foundation is working really hard on this, oh my goodness, and we've worked to create this partnership with the city that will endure for the next 100 years for service in South Kitsap. So thank you for listening to that. indulging me in like now my complete history tour of the Port Orchard Library, which there's just so many things in there that I thought were kind of fascinating, you know, the $210,000 and the work of the librarians behind the scenes to get the right building. So I also wanted to just touch for a minute on some of the partnerships that we have in South Kitsap, and Deanna Conger is here with me, the Public Services Supervisor at Port Orchard. She's amazing and has been with the library system for a long time as well, and we just actively work with so many community entities in South Kitsap. And I don't really think that we would have been able to get to this point to work on the event center if we didn't. And our staff, you know, they serve on boards, they work with different community groups, of course, South Kitsap School District, and then out in Manchester with our Manchester Community Association, working on our festivals at Cacad, Stormwater Park. Eric Sisney is going to be bringing his tractor and his antique cider press to the Oktoberfest next Saturday. If anybody wants to come from 11 to 3, we'll be there pressing cider for the kids to see. I'm on the board of South Kitsap Rotary, our youth services librarian. Both librarians and I, when I can attend a meeting of a group that was newly formed last year called Community Resource Gathering, and this is a super exciting group in South Kitsap, and the intent is just to get as many business owners and community leaders together to talk about what the problems are in South Kitsap and how we can work together to solve them. So I do think we maybe should look at a different name. Community Resource Gathering is a little bit unwieldy, but that's truly what it is. It really reflects what's happening there. And we've, really active in our downtown association, which is now undergoing a transition. We're working to reorganize in order to better represent the businesses and just to focus and concentrate on events that would help us remain relevant as a downtown. And we've really strengthened the partnership between the two locations, and Deanna is a key on that. We have staff that go back and forth. I was talking to Eric Sisney the other day, and we were having a conversation about Manchester. I was trying to ask, there was this old lore that when the library moved from the top of the hill to the bottom, they actually formed a chain of people and took the books, one by one down the hill. I did find nothing on that. And so I was just asking Eric, as somebody that was in the community at the time, if he remembered anything about the move. And he kind of reiterated, the libraries were really separate and the communities were really separate. It was like the Manchester Library and the Port Orchard Library, we were in the same system, but we really were separate libraries. We had completely separate staffs, and that's the way that it had always been until I started managing in 2020. I think it was just kind of they were each their own community, but really it's all South Kitsap. And so each library is very unique and has its own special aspects and community that it's serving, but we're also working to strengthen our ties between the two libraries. So we have several staff that work at both locations. Deanna works at Manchester sometimes. Jen, Holly, our supervisor at Manchester, who would be here, but she's on vacation this week, so I didn't even tell her that this was happening. She works at Port Orchard once a week, so we're really trying to make sure that we're all aware. We share trainings. We're sharing our staff day together on the 7th, so it's just I think it's been a fun opportunity to expand the services in a new way in the South. So I very much appreciate having that opportunity and being here to speak with you today. And thanks to Deanna for coming to be support. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Yeah, sure.
Loved the presentation, loved seeing. There was so much about that I didn't realize. Number one, I didn't realize that, going back 100 years, we're not in the 1800s anymore. If you go back 100 years, kind of, that was a harsh reality for me. But I didn't realize that Port Orchard had moved that much.
Yeah.
But it really speaks to the resilience of everybody who supported the system and the evolution and the importance of evolution, which makes things, really exciting down the road. So I want to open this up to anybody who might have any questions or comments.
I don't have any questions about my comment. It's always fun when you get to work in an institution with this lengthy of history to be able to, excavate it, but also to see what things have changed and what things have not
Yeah,
changed
yes.
across that time. So it was a great
Exactly.
presentation, Kathleen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had one question. I'm wondering if there's anything that you do or have. I mean, you clearly have a lot of history, but is there anything around the library that or anything that you do and how you interact with each other that kind of carries over from kind of the founding of the library, 100 years ago? Is there any sort of tradition or anything that you carry on as a team?
I think just the fact that we remain downtown has been super key. Throughout the time, there were lots of attempts to move the library. Even when I first started as a manager, there was an attempt to move the library to the Gibbons Center. And that wasn't the first time, which is a school that's up on the top of the hill, right up at the top of Sydney. It's no longer a school now, it's kind of a community center. And the county owns that building, and that wasn't, when the county first owned that building, I guess back in the 90s, there was a push to move the library to that building, and again. So I think the fact that the city has stood by the library and kept the library downtown, and the recognition that the library is such an important component of a vibrant downtown, and that we've been doing that since 1924. I found it really neat that I didn't realize that original library was literally just right out the door from where we are now. And I think that is just a really neat thing.
Fantastic. Anybody have anything to add? Jason?
Just a comment. I just really wanted to thank you. It was an engaging presentation, but not only that, I just want to thank you for your level of care for not only Port Orchard, but for the Manchester community. I mean, it is pouring through your pores how much you are proud of your branches, right, and your communities. And so I just really wanted to lift you up for that, because when you think about a person who's leading a branch, and in your case, a couple of branches, you're involved in everything in South Kitsap. People know who you are, and it really speaks volumes about how much you put into your work, how much you put into the community, and how much you put into your staff. And talking with them, you built really good community with your staff, really good process with your community partners, and I just really want to lift you up and for all you do. And it's just incredible to watch you, and I can't wait to see how we all grow together with you being in South Kitsap. So I wanted to thank you, both you and Deanna. And the last thing is, Port Orchard keeps churning out just great staff, as evidenced by Ms. Shannon Peterson to my right here, our deputy director, who had a stint at Port Orchard. And so a long legacy of good staff, good process, and really good community. So I just really want to thank you for what you do every day, and it really shone through in this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, well, I definitely love my job and South Kitsap, so thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to 7.02. Any board member updates to share? Pales in comparison to running a library for 100 years, but.
Back on September 3rd, along with Kathleen, I attended active threat training at Manchester, and that was really interesting. The sheriff's deputy came and spent an hour with us, and I learned that the first thing you do, and this is be somebody with a gun, a knife, a machete, something like that, if you can, flee. And luckily we have 5 exits in Manchester with a fairly small library, so people can just go. If you can't do that, then you're supposed to hide. If you can't hide, then you have to fight. And one thing I hadn't thought about was fire extinguishers. You can grab a fire extinguisher, but you can shoot out about 15 feet, and that'll stop somebody pretty good for a while. And so I think we're going to recommend at least one more fire extinguisher in Manchester. But anyway, that was interesting. And I think we learned a lot. And then I attended the staff picnic, and that was for a short time. I couldn't stay a long time, but anyway, that was good. And then, of course, on Friday, I'll be going to the 100th anniversary at Port Orchard and attending that. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's it.
Good report. I have started conversations with a consultant that we used initially to hire Jason. Some of you will recall that we also use that same consultant to support a 360 review, performance review. So we're just starting to, it's not something we would do every year in terms of that level of engagement in a performance review, but we talked about as the trustees, we would look at doing that every other year or every 3 years in terms of being able to get a more deeper line of sight, if you will, in terms of staff input. So those conversations are just beginning, and we'll be bringing more information forward in the next month or two.
Thank you very much. Earlier this month, I attended the Kitsap Regional Library Foundation Board meeting where we talked about our upcoming board retreat later this year, and also attended some meetings in preparation for our state audit. So looking forward to getting the results from that. And that was my September. So thank you everybody for sharing. We will go to Eric Sisney for the Finance Committee report.
Thanks to your staff, and we're in really good health. We're within expectations, so no surprises, just the way we like to see it.
Thank you, Eric. For the 7.04 financial report, Dan, do you have anything to add?
No, but I'm here to take questions if you have any.
Dan, I actually have a question only because it stands out so much in terms of, and I know this has been, this is an issue that's kind of crossed from year to year, but I thought we'd get your feedback on it, is that increasingly across time, security services just keep going up and up, but they're pretty noticeable at this point in terms of that we have 16,000 in actual against a 1,200 annual budget. Do you want to speak to what's contributing? I can see a little bit of reference in that, but what is contributing to that significant?
Well, when
line
we originally built the budget, we weren't expecting to use security services. And then it became apparent that we still needed to keep it on at a few branches through 2024. So we'll be reevaluating that for 2025. But it basically it was not in the budget.
Didn't know if something was changed. And is that really evening surveillance kind of driving through? Okay.
Right. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dan. We'll go to 7.05, the Library Director's Report. Jason.
Hey, good evening. So August, we finished out our annual summer learning program, and it was another well-engaged program. Continues to provide high value for the organization. I don't think that's any surprise. Can't wait till next year. I will not divulge what we've landed on as a theme yet because we need to keep that under wraps. But really excited about the summer learning program. And August, we also, as an organization, focused on equity. Under the leadership of our Director of Strategy and Communications, we invited staff to think about one of our values, which is equity, and what it means to them. And for the organization, we've really been headlong into preparing ourselves to meet our equity goals as an organization. As you know, when I first got here, under the leadership of Lucretia Robertson, who was then just the Director of DEI, we unveiled a DEI program for the organization, or plan for the organization. And so looking at how that works with our current strategic and long-range plan for the library for the future, what does that mean for the organization in terms of being a welcoming place? And so what we've really been doing this year is teams have been delved into training, everything from accessible documents to physical accessibility. And so we're trying to create eventually spaces for full participation. That's what we're really at. And so The key areas of training is, again, have been around accessibility and language access. So our goal is to really just be able to best serve everyone and to be able to help staff understand the diverse needs of all of our patrons. So, by doing so, we're not just removing the barriers, but also creating an environment where everyone, regardless of their abilities, regardless of their physical abilities, language abilities, really can feel engaged and comfortable in the library. So we hope that by the end of the year, we'll be better equipped to at least be able to assess where we need to make improvements. And so this is really a learning year for us. This is a year of training. It's a year of assessment, because when we want to bite off, how do we make ourselves more welcoming, particularly when it comes to physical spaces, that entails a lot of process, a lot of money, and a lot of thinking about how we, over time, bring ourselves to where we need to be. We've got, 9 different libraries all built in different times, and we've got a new library being built, which we hope we don't have any of those problems. But at the same time, really wanting the organization to be as compliant as possible, because we are, and we like to think of libraries as barrierless institutions, and so how do we continue to be able to provide a physical space that is incumbent upon welcoming everybody in the community? And then also, how does our service model, the language we speak, the services that we contract with, how are we able to sort of mitigate the barriers in terms of communication with folks who might be coming in, who speak different languages and read different languages? And so really excited about the work. I am proud of our teams for delving into that work. And we'll hopefully be better equipped at the end of this year to know what our scope of work will look like in the future. And so the work aligns directly with our commitment to equity, and will continue to shape how we design and move our services forward. In public services news, so you've heard about the Port Orchard celebrating its 100th year anniversary, but August 28th, the Little Boston Library celebrated its 50th anniversary in terms of years of service to the community. And so there was an open house. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to attend that day, but I get a chance to come by and talk to staff later. Unfortunately, Kathleen and I will miss this week attending to family, but I'll do the same I did for Little Boston. I'll bake things and bring it to you guys. And so, it's really the acknowledgement that, the community that we continue to build in all of our libraries is really important. It's always good to recognize anniversaries like this. And so I heard it was a wonderful event. It was an open house. Staff, were able to make some treats, and, patrons brought in treats. I had a couple. They were delicious. And the celebration is just more than a reflection of the past. It's a reminder of how our libraries really remain vital in all of our communities. And so Little Boston has become a gathering place and a place for learning and sharing knowledge, like all of our locations. And so I want to thank everybody who made that event possible, particularly the staff there. And when we often think about our libraries, Little Boston is our smallest location. And although it's the smallest, it's mighty in that it has wonderful connections with the community, and really proud that we have staff who are really engaged in all things community. Human resources news, we continue to see movement with regard to staff coming and going. It's just natural for any organization as large as ours. And so last month, we onboarded 4 new library assistants and a permanent library assistant for Sylvan Way and Mobile, in addition to a new supervisor at CTS. So really proud about the teams that we're hiring. They're wonderful human beings and perfect fits for their teams and the library community, and we're excited to have them. I try to meet all new staff when they come at some point. We always give welcomes, but just being able to put the face with the name and meet them and welcome them is really important for us. And so as a community, we try to acknowledge and welcome all of our staff when they come aboard. And really, it's a testament to the work that Human Resources does to keep our pipeline full. It's a small but mighty group. Caitlin Moon is our HR generalist, and she is really solely responsible for filling that hiring pipeline, obviously with the help of directors and managers and supervisors to fill out those lists, but it's her from the onset screening applications and having communications with directors and managers to figure out needs and to get things posted. It's a busy piece of work that is largely done by one person. So I want to acknowledge in this space the Herculean work that Ms. Moon does for the organization, and I don't want us to take her for granted and for Human Resource Department for granted, because for, again, such a small team, to have one person doing all of that, particularly when we have multiple vacancies, we can't take that for granted. It's a lot of work. And so I really wanted to lift her up in the Human Resources Department. And then lastly, as an organization, as a leadership team, we continue to focus on planning for the future. You heard Kathleen talk about Port Orchard's history, both past, present, and the future. And for us, that's where leadership still is squarely in. Planning for our future, planning for fiscal solvency, planning for what library operations will be like in the future. So we're monitoring everything from library use to budget trends to inflationary rates to the cost of doing business in order to really determine our fiscal solvency for the future. And that's hard work to do. It's hard to determine where you're going to be when you don't have all the data available to be able to determine that. And how do we plan the future without knowing what the future is going to be? The answer is we have to continue the work that we're doing, but we have to anticipate needs. And so part of that is looking at statistics and trends and seeing how libraries are moving. That can't be the only thing that informs our strategy, because we have to rely on our folks who are out in the branches working. We have to rely on what we see, but we also have to be smart, and so that we are tapped and tuned into the community. And so just really want to highlight a couple things that I put in a report operationally. And we talk about this stuff all the time, if not together, separately in individual meetings. And so, you know, we're trying to best position the library for long-term success. So door counts up almost 10% over last year. And there's a story behind all of this stuff, right? It's just not the numbers and that why are more people coming? And yeah, we need to look behind that, but I think creating a story out of this, I think the story from the door counts is people are, you know, visiting our spaces contrary to what we hear, that, you know, libraries are dead and people are relying on, you know, the digital sphere to get their resources. People are physically still coming into library. In a lot of ways, it's refreshing because it's, you know, what we thought people were moving away from that sort of library service, so particularly after pandemic, when, you know, a lot of technology was leveraged to be able to bring people together or put people into a space. So to see not only door counts up by 10%, but also registrations, that means people are physically getting cards. That means a lot, and that's a significant number, 10% over last year. And as a result, it follows that then door counts, hold pickup appointments have decreased, but almost, you know, 60%. And so does that mean that we move away from hold pickup appointments? No. I think what it means is that we have a service that we can curate for people who can't physically get into the library. That's all part of being accessible. That's all part of being equitable. But that's no longer a service that's needed heavily as it used to be. Public computer sessions up 15%. That's not a surprise. It's obvious when you are physically in our libraries that people are using computers, people are printing things. Have you seen the cost of ink? You know, I print, if I can, we'll print at a library if I need to, because my daughters use up all my ink for pictures. But something like that doesn't only affect, you know, the poor. It affects working class, middle class, because it's just an exorbitant cost to be able to print materials. And so I think it's significant that people, and it's significant also that we've invested in our printing infrastructure. And so being able to anticipate that, relying on this team when I got here to say we need to upgrade the printing infrastructure, we need to upgrade it. And we're seeing the results of that, is that we have systems in place to make it more manageable for people to access their prints, to be able to make reservations, to be able to send prints from home. And we'll continue to sort of finesse that process. And then lastly, you know, personalized services like book bundles. You know, you can sort of curate how you want to get your books. You know, if you're coming into a library and you just have trouble on, I don't know what I want to read. I know I want this, that, or the other, and I don't really have time. Having book bundles created and waiting for you can just take a bundle home really takes, you know, a lot of people don't have time these days. You're busy from one place to the next. Like being able to curate and personalize services, I think, is really important for us, and I think that's an area of opportunity for us to really get better at. And so I see opportunities in these numbers. I see opportunities in the data. And I'm excited to continue having conversations with our team and really informing where we're going to be when we figure out what our ask will be for how we'll carry library services through to the county. So again, these numbers really just reflect the dynamic nature of what libraries continue to be. It's not one thing or another, it's multiple things. And that's why it's so hard to plan, because we do a lot of things. It isn't just like we'll do mobile services and be out, but we still have a contingent of people who want to come in and use libraries the way they did when you saw Port Orchard Library in 1929, right, or 1924. It's incredible that we've had this wide swath of library users that we have to try to plan for and we have to try to initiate services for. So it's a daunting task, but one that we're up for, and I'm really excited to be able to do it with this team and to continue planning for our future. So we'll continue to adapt and our services to meet the needs of a diverse and changing library community and a changing, economy. And so that's all I have for you this month. I'm open for questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason, for the update. Appreciate the update on metrics as well. I know that that's something we've wanted to dig into further, and getting those metrics helps support the story of the success story of everything that you're doing. Gives you the data to keep doing what you're doing that's successful, or if you need more support, whether it's in dollars or something else, you need to make some tweaks, then you have the data to support that. So that's wonderful. Thank you for giving the update. Any questions or comments? Yep. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
We'll go to 8.01, use of library vehicles policy, second reading. Jason, back to you.
Back to me. So we brought this policy through several months ago, and essentially this policy establishes for us the clear guidelines and safe, efficient, responsible use of library vehicles. So the policy again aims to ensure the proper stewardship of library resources, and it's designed to minimize a liability risk, maintain compliance with legal and insurance requirements, and it really outlines the responsibilities of staff who operate library vehicles, including maintaining proper licenses, adhering to safety protocols, and ensuring that vehicles are used exclusively for library-related activities. And so we took this policy away, and we had some questions from our union partners that we were able to navigate with our Director of Human Resources, who has been in communication with our union partners, and we've moved past the communication phase to agreement phase in terms of agreeing on all facets of this library driver's policy. And so I am before you today to ask the board to approve the library driver's policy. Any questions about the policy itself that may not have been covered before?
Looks like there's no questions. Is there a motion?
Yes, I so move to accept this policy.
We just let Eric do it. I second the motion to advance this policy, to approve the policy.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Easy. Thank you. Motion passes. We will go to 9.01, patron grievance policy revisions. Shannon, good evening.
Hi, everyone. I am excited to bring the grievance policy forward. Really, the most significant change to this policy is a shift in procedures. So typically, our procedures are staff-facing for most of our policies, and that is originally how this policy was written. Looking at it with fresh eyes, it really feels like the procedures are patron procedures. It's sort of understanding how to navigate the process. So the most significant change here is you'll see that the procedures have been brought forward into the policy document so that we're increasing transparency and sharing expectations with the public of kind of how all of this works and what they can expect from us. Of course, there's minor language changes, a little bit of a tweak with the dates, with the amount of time, so that it would align more clearly with some of our other timelines so that we're able to easily track those things. But yeah, just really excited to bring the procedures forward so that the public knows what to expect from us in this.
That's great. Thank you. And to clarify, we'll read over this and then we won't actually vote on anything, and then we'll review next month? What was your timing?
This
What
is
were
a
your thoughts
first
on timing?
reading.
Right.
Yeah. Right? It's a first reading. Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. One question that I had, I was looking at the policy, and there's a section for name, but is there the opportunity to submit feedback anonymously? may
Yes,
have missed
so
it.
we start the process. The hope is that before patrons enter this kind of more formal process, that there's a lot of opportunity for conversation. So we try and make that as explicit as possible. We have comment cards where you don't have to list your name. Folks can contact us online. So there's a couple of course, they can have meetings with staff or manager, myself. That part would be tricky to do anonymously, maybe phone, something.
Right.
But yeah, we're hoping that there's a lot of opportunity to get feedback in a myriad of ways before we actually enter the formal grievance.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you. Any questions, comments before we move on? Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll come back to this next month. And finally, for housekeeping, future meeting dates, our next Board of Trustees monthly meeting is on Tuesday, October 22nd, along with the Long Range Strategic Planning Committee meeting. So thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate seeing you all, and have a wonderful evening.